Van life. Van life, the hashtag has been building momentum for many years. And each year is exposed with stories of young people having the best time in the world. There we go. Hello, welcome to English Podcast with Paul. Back again for another episode. I hope you're well. And if you've got some headphones, now's the time to put them on and plug in and listen to this uninterrupted, unscripted, unedited version of native speaking English. I'm the native. Sometimes there's other people, sometimes there's not. But we're just waffling on about things in English. Okay, so today is about van life. Van life. Everybody's seen those pictures, with your feet out the bottom of the van, looking at a nice vista. Maybe it's a beach, maybe it's mountains, but your feet are there, in the photo, so you know it's them. And they've got a coffee and a pretty little van with bunting and candles. You know the pictures, those pictures. So van life is in the news a lot. It gets talked about a lot. More so about being a digital nomad, which we've spoken about before. But the van life movement, I think, is probably not a fair picture to say, because these people are often only doing it for a couple of weeks or just a few months, just to get their Instagram ratings up higher. Oh yeah, I did Instagram, I bought a t-shirt, that kind of thing, Been there, done that, bought a t-shirt. So what is van life exactly, right? What is van life? Van life is people that live permanently. I say permanently, there are people that live in it part-time, but generally it's supposed to be people that live in van life permanently to reduce their outgoings, to reduce the cost of accommodation, and to be able to be free to travel. So for example, my wife and I bought an old camper van and we went around Europe. I'll go into that in more detail in a moment. But we traveled around Europe. We had a great time. We visited lots of places, went to lots of cafes and spent lots of money. So for van life, this exploring part was very good. We really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Who's it for? So obviously you see more often that it's for young people exploring, having a great time. But actually, van life tends to suit older people that are happy to put up with discomfort, happy to put up with a bit of isolation, happy to have no post coming out the door. So I believe van life is more suited to the older generation. They've got a little bit more guts about them and less concerned about the niceties of and amenities of living in a house. Okay, right. Legally, yes. So van life is for older people generally. It's been taken over by young people for their Instagram likes. And often it doesn't last long for these young people. You'll see posted, oh, why I quit that van life. Van life's not all it's made out to be. Most of these people knew that already. Many young people struggle with the isolation. Some struggle with the finances or just having to rough it when it's pouring down with rain and cold. So not being fully prepared. So that's what a lot of van life people do. They're on Instagram, they do that, and then they find out the truth and the reality a few months down the line. So that's the score with the influx of young people saying how great it is, and then they dissipate and wander off and disappear and move on to the next big hashtag, the next new exciting thing. Hence why they're called hipsters. It's just what's hip and trendy for the time. Van life, though, does have another real meaning for other people, for those that are often those that are forced out of homes, forced out of accommodation, or those that just want to travel and enjoy life, but generally is not a permanent long-term solution for most. If you're able to get a job and eventually get an apartment or a house, then that's what you're likely to do. Because van life, really, the full-time van life, is only ideal and perfectly suited for very few people. Personally, my wife and I really enjoyed it. We really, really enjoyed it. And for us, it's a stepping stone to the next place. We were able to save money, and we worked in our country whilst living in a van. So that's another aspect which I'll come on to in a moment. Okay, right, legally. Legally, yes, you can live in your van, but you should have an address where, I'm saying that specifically for the UK, you should have an address where the government can send you letters. Normally you get some insurance through the post, but basically it's so they can send you maybe a speeding fine or changes of circumstances to your driving license, maybe ill health, or you need to renew your driving license because it's run out of date. Our licenses generally go for 10 years, then you have to change your photo. So the DVLA, the Driving Licensing Vehicle Authority, something like that, has to have an address for you. So they can arrest you, so they can send you fines, or so you can just change your ID, your photo. But that's the long and the short of it. Yes, it is legal. Okay, where you park is another story altogether, because this falls under a different category, more of the highways agency, whether you're sleeping in a lay-by, whether you're living in a lay-by, or whether you find other private land. So private land, you have to have the permission of the landlord or landlady, and highways agency or government land, again, you need permission. Like I said about lay-bys, that's a consideration you'd have to take whether you want to park in lay-bys. Often there are beauty spots. There are often National Trust properties or Forestry Commission property. When I say properties, I mean car parks. So car parks often have signs saying no overnight parking. They often have height barriers. So if you're too tall of a vehicle, you cannot get in. These are everyday occurrences that we come across when living in a van. But on the flip side to that, if you're traveling and you come down to a beach or you come down to a seashore, something like this, it is really, really beautiful to open your doors during the day or in the morning and just sit and feel that fresh air coming in. It's really, really nice. So, but that doesn't happen a lot unless you live next to a beach. Okay, so that's legally. Right, some people ask us about, so going back to legally about car parking, things like that. When we were working, what we did, we worked for like 3-4 months, saved up some money, and then we went traveling around Europe. That was the thing we did. So when we were working, quite often we would be working for a transport company, something like this, which normally had premises in an industrial estate or a quiet little village where there's ample parking. And my wife's vehicle, because we worked in 2 different places and we'd meet up like every couple of days and things like this and weekends and stuff like that. So my wife's vehicle was very small and she was able to park it up outside her work. There, they knew what she was doing. They knew they lived in it and they were very amenable and helpful. I, on the other hand, was living kind of in the industrial estate and I parked over a drain. So I only used eco-friendly washing up liquid, for example, and Ecover, I think was the name. And that way, any water that you're throwing out with dishwater can go down a drain, is not a problem for environmental reasons. So I lived outside the industrial estate and I worked in the vehicle company in there. That worked really well. It was literally just 10 seconds walk in the morning, and that was great. I can come back at lunchtime, cook my lunch in the van, and then go back to work. That was perfect. It worked really well. And again, my company was very amenable and happy and had no problems with it. I made sure I moved the van on the weekend, so it's not there permanently, so people don't think I'm living there and taking advantage of the industrial estate. I left no other traces other than that. Many of the other work colleagues would say, "Oh, I saw you were in this morning. I saw your chimney smoking away," because I had a log fire. And the log fire was very romantic and enjoyable, and often free heating. Free heating. So it cost me no money. People would give me wood, and I could chop it up and put it in my boot ready, and then just bring in a bag load. So that worked out really well for me. All right, legal, yes. Watering water, right, okay. So on the weekends, Sue and I would go off and we'd fill up with water, often at a supermarket. In the UK, the best supermarket is Morrison's. They have kind of like a policy to allow people to have free water, especially travellers. So we didn't take advantage of this. We just rocked up sort of once a week, filled up our water containers and disappeared again. Obviously, we spent money in Morrison's as well. They have a good range of plant-based food, so why not while we're there? And also, there was a petrol station, so that made life easier. You know, two birds with one stone, that kind of analogy. Two jobs in one go. So that was water. The other thing that goes with water is like showering. So often we would strip wash in our vans, which can be a little uncomfortable if you've got a small van, but okay if you've got a big van. My van was very big. We have had a shower in previous vans, but we found it was more hassle than it was worth, because you've got to get yourself wet, turn the shower off to conserve water, soap yourself up, and often if it's cold, that's not very desirable. Then turn the shower back on, and hopefully there's no problem with it going on and off, which we found was a lot of problems, depending on where you're facing and the wind, because we had the carbon monoxide exhausted out of the van. And obviously there's sensors inside the van and sensors inside the boiler. So if the wind blew it back in again, the boiler would cut out. Ugh. And when you're in the middle of a shower, all soaped up and soap around your face and eyes, and the shower goes cold, that's not an exciting day. Believe me. Okay, so having a shower in the van wasn't worth the hassle. We only did that in one van. So we're now on our fourth or fifth van. Fourth with Sue, fifth, I had one before Sue. So my fifth van. So that's one way of getting a shower. Another way is I joined a gym, and actually it was a leisure centre. I joined a leisure centre, and the reception was upstairs and the shower was downstairs. So I could come in, and I got Sue to come in with me to the leisure centre, and we would often just go in there for a shower and go out again. And then when I decided that I wasn't using the leisure centre enough, I cancelled my subscription. And then we occasionally went back in I know it's unethical, but we went back in and had showers. So that was really good. Nobody asked us anything. That was easy. Obviously, there's also friends and family that you can shower with, and not shower with your friends and family, but use their facilities. Often we would fill up a family's house for water, but many people are on water meters now. So if we did that regularly, it would end up costing them a little bit of money, although only a very small amount of money. So that is another way of getting water and showering, or showering with friends and family. Okay, toilet. Oh, people always ask us about the toilet, going for the number ones, number twos. So there tends to be an evolution with many campers and many van lifers. You start off with high expectations and high needs, and you buy all the gadgets and gizmos, and then over time your standards drop. I don't know if that's good or bad, but you become less concerned and worried about smell and about convenience and things like this. So in our last van, not my current van, that's a whole new setup again. But in our last van, we both had like cassette toilets, and we used biological and eco chemicals, and we just used that. Obviously, whenever we were out, if we could use local facilities or other facilities available in restaurants and things like that, we would do that. But if needs must, and it's the middle of the night, you got to go, you got to go. Often where we were parked in tucked away places in the countryside, things like this, I could go for a wee up against a tree, provided nobody's watching and you're not near a school and things like that. So that was the easiest way. Some friends of ours have a compost loo where they just buy sawdust from the local supermarket and pet store, and they just sprinkle sawdust over theirs. I imagine they get rid of it either in a bin bag and put into a community bin, such as in a park, things like that, or they find a quiet farmer's field to dump it in, because it is just organic matter and it is starting to degrade. So that's another concern some people have. It's not that much of a big deal once you get used to it. Okay, and in regards to the cassette toilets, one thing we used to do is just put the cassette into a big bag, like a big shopping bag, cover it with a towel, and then take it into a public toilet and empty it down the public toilet. Although if there's somebody in the cubicle next to you, they may hear some interesting and strange noises. So you may get some funny looks when you come out. But other than that, public toilets, you can even take it into McDonald's. You've got a cover over it, you take it into McDonald's toilet and you pour it down there if the other toilets are closed. So there's lots of options to get rid of it, and it's not a big a deal once you get used to it. It's just a chore, something you've got to do on a regular basis. Okay. Right, as I said before about parking industrial estates, the UK is very anti living in vans. More so if you stay in one place for too long. So at the industrial estate, people really didn't take no notice. People going to work, coming back, nobody took any notice. And I was gone on the weekends. But if you parked up somewhere, say in a residential area, like on the outskirts of a town, and you park there for more than a few nights, people may start asking questions. People may start confronting you and say, hey, what are you doing parking here? Why are you here? Blah, 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 blah. And I don't care myself. I pay tax on my road tax, on the fuel, on the things I buy. I pay plenty of taxes. But my wife doesn't like confrontation. She'd rather just be quiet and away and avoid that. So often we would only park for one night, sometimes two if we felt brave, but generally only one night in any new place or any place that we wanted to visit or frequent, and move around a little bit. So that is key. I think some people that have lived in vans have not helped themselves by staying in a place for a long time. There are other places, that people feel that they have the right to park forever. And I'm not sure about the legislation. I'm not sure about the local government rules or the parish rules and regulations. But in some of these outlying villages and outlying towns, especially around the countryside, there are things, paths and stopping areas that are known as droves. Often they're even called the drove. So they're like an old path, an old road, a historic path. And there seems to be some kind of unspoken law that people could use these paths to bring their cattle to market or bring their cattle across the country. So these droves were institutional part of the countryside and part of the country to get back and forth. Some of them have been turned into main roads, but there are quite a few quiet, small roads. And on these droves, there were the occasional places to stop and rest your animals and rest yourself, possibly for the night. Often those resting places have been turned into car parks, either by the local water board or by the parish council or people from that area that govern the town or the village. So there's different understanding about whether or not you have the rule, whether you have rights and right of way to be able to use that path for yourself, and whether or not you're allowed to stay on it. I think it's fair if you stayed there for 1 or 2 nights, maybe even a week. But there are some people that encamp there for years on end, and they sprawl out their belongings. So we've seen many caravans, no cars, just a caravan, which implies there's no intention to move, that have been sprayed up with graffiti. And then there's lots of peripheral belongings like bicycles and chairs and other belongings to the occupier of the caravan. And it does look quite unsightly, and it does look like they're encamped there for a long time. One famous place that is like this is Stonehenge. I'm not sure if you've been to Stonehenge, but just down one side of it, there is a drove. And there is all year round, there are people parked there. Often people come and go, and often you have visitors come and go. But you'll find there are people that stay there all year round. And I think the police have a purge every now and then. But there are people that are staying there for a long time. There was chickens there, chicken coops. Oh, goodness me. It seemed like people were planning on staying there for a long time. And like I said, I don't know the rules, I don't know the regulations, and so they may well have the right to do that. They may well have. I just think it's not doing any favors for the traveller community. It's not helping, us New Age travellers, because in the UK there's a distinctive, maybe not a distinctive, there's a difference between old travellers, which some people may know as gypsies. That's not a term that's allowed anymore. It's not a very polite term. I can't think of another term. But travellers with a Romanic heritage. So there's those travellers that have their own community. And these people live in, I wouldn't say, they live by their community and their values, which is fine. They can do that. We're all entitled to it. That's fine. And then the other type of travellers, like I was, just living in the van, moving around, or staying in one place. Not part of a traditional kind of community. That may be contested, but that's the way I view it. So you got the ethical, traditional gypsy travellers, and they have their own community and their ways of living. And then you have the New Age travellers that may be working in factories and half in society, half out of society. And these people can sometimes take advantage, I think, of the system by having a chicken coop out, having lots of bicycles, the leaving trash, mess, rubbish, litter around where they are. I think they're not helping, because the society and the community is for everybody, not just one group or one person to abuse as they please. So that's my view. That's really why the country has a negative view of all travellers. The government doesn't like travellers, and the general population of people don't like travellers, because we're different, and because they are different, and I think because we're different, and we have a not the same as everybody else. We're bucking the status quo. There you go. Bucking the status quo, not doing the same as everybody else. So, for example, if I live in a van, I am not paying rent or mortgage. And that upsets a lot of people. They think that's not fair. I'm not paying council tax, and they think that's not fair. They are entitled to their view and their opinion, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. So, like I said, the country generally doesn't like travellers. So, trying to stay somewhere for 1 or 2 nights, you have to be on your toes. You have to be aware that somebody might knock on your door and say, "Oi, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. Go away." Or other confrontation like this. Hence why I keep moving every couple of days, except for when I'm in industrial state. All right, so that's the way England, Britain considers travellers. Now, in Scotland, it's a little bit different. There's allegedly a right to roam, although I think that's not quite correct. Many people do travel around Scotland because it's so vast. There is an alternative, and this alternative is going to Europe. Now, before Brexit, this was brilliant because in Europe, people are much more open and relaxed about travellers. So if you've got a van that looks tidy and clean and looks like you're a traveller, you know, like solar panel on the roof and a vent, you know, that kind of thing, then these kind of people or that kind of traveller seems to be welcomed in Europe. There's things like Stellplatz and Ayers. You can buy a book for these things. So these things, Stellplatz and Ayers, are specifically made hard standing, mostly hard standing, for travellers, for visitors in a van. I think maybe that's a better term. So Europe really likes and welcomes visitors in a van because they spend money in the community. They get to enjoy the community and enjoy the country, and they share that knowledge back with other people when they go home, and hopefully that would encourage new people to visit that town. So like I said, they are hard standing specifically for motorhomes. Okay, these often come with water or a way of emptying your toilet, or sometimes internet and sometimes electric. Sue and I have stayed at a few with electric and internet for free. Often there's a sign saying you can only stay for 24 hours or 48 hours. But the place that we went last time that was free had, I think it was 14 days. So you could stay there for 2 weeks. Wow, 2 weeks with free internet and free electricity. Oh my goodness. That is so different to the UK. That was so different. That warm welcoming. And there was beautiful walks around the dam. That was amazing. So we bought a book of Ayers for Spain and Portugal. We traveled all around Spain, going to all the different Ayers. Some, only a few, you have to pay for, but most are free. So we enjoyed Spain and Portugal. We also popped over to Morocco just for the day. There's Germany. They have Stellplatz. We had a great time in Germany. Netherlands. Now, I think it's illegal to stealth camp or camp in your van in Netherlands. So we actually weren't sure of this. So we went to a campsite just on the outskirts of Amsterdam. I think it was called Zeeburg campsite. And it was brilliant. It was really good. They had herbs and spices just grown like in the middle. They had a canteen, things that you could buy, laundry facilities, shower facilities. It was really good. It was really good. We were very happy with that and a reasonable price. So we enjoyed Amsterdam. We enjoyed the Netherlands and Rotterdam, obviously, and quite a lot of other villages and towns along the way. So we really enjoyed our trip around Europe. We didn't get over to the Eastern Bloc, but that's a trip for next time. So the Europe is very, very different to the UK. We had a great time in Europe, but it's not so good in the UK. There's a lot more things to think about with van life that I think a lot of young people don't think about. And that's like mindfulness and wellness of your being, if you will, of your mental health. So like I said before, there can often be times of loneliness and also joy of being near a beach. And that's what we loved about Europe. We could go drive around Spain or other countries and feel like we could stay for ages at the beach or an estuary or a river or a forest. It was beautiful. But the downsides are there can be loneliness. Sometimes you could be weeks or months before you meet another person in a van. So that can be a downside. Sometimes the weather is really bad, and it's pouring down or it's freezing cold and snowing. We were quite cold in Germany, but we had heaters, and it's a very good idea to have redundancy, built-in redundancy. So if one heater breaks, you have another type of heat source. So I had the log fire and the diesel heater and the heat from the engine if I put the blowers on. So the mental health is very important as well. Making sure you're warm and dry. Making sure that you contact and speak to friends and family and stay connected to the real world, for want of another term. Also, be prepared for the unexpected. You need to have a little bit of money behind, whatever you choose as your safety net, because you could break down, you could get stuck, and there could be costs involved. So there is the downside to that. Also, working can be great if you're working online, but if you're working in a factory or you're working in a set place, in a set location, and you're having to go back and forth, and you're living in a small environment, such as your camper van, then that can sometimes feel negative and bad and not help your mental health. So it's important to get fresh air. It's important to connect with other people. It's important to have some money behind you in case you break down. Okay, so those things are very important. What else we got? Mental health, taboos, digital nomad, costs. So it's easy to get spiraled away with the cost. You can spend a lot of money. Even though people say it's cheap to live in a van, you can end up spending a lot of money on gadgets, on internet, on driving around, on tires. All these things can add up. So you have to have a budget. You have to try and be motivated and in control of your finances. And then that way you will be able to save money. You will be able to live a cheap life and save up for whatever adventure next, or business, or whatever you're doing, or to move into a property. There are often students that post about living in a van for 1 or 2 years to save up for a house. Okay, so we have an article on the website if you're interested about living in a van. But my conclusion is very, very good for a set length of time. If you have goals in place and you have a target for money, or you have a target for 6 months, or you have a target of visiting 6, 7, 8 places, then van life can be really, really good and a real positive experience. If nothing else, it'll teach you about how you feel about your own personal self and your own body, and you'll get used to knowing who you are. So I think it's a great experience, but it's not for everybody. Okay, so that's my conclusion. If you want to know more, like I said, there's an article on our website at secondclasshobos.com, or I might even post it on this website for this channel, englishpodcastwithpaul.com. So I hope to see you in the next video. Keep speaking English, and remember, keep it fun, keep it happy, enjoy it. All right, see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.